How to hunt this weekend as this weather front rolls through. It's with Bobby Kendall. He's a big believer in his Magic X days. This weekend should be good. Here's how he's going to hunt it. Here we go. Well, I want to dive into this first off because we have a rain cell going in right now, and give me your perspective on weather and bucks, and then even for October to get a little bit more linear.
Yep. And so the whole deer season, I kind of I have a very systematic approach, and there's three things that I think affect a big deer moving in daylight. Two of those are predictable. One is, date or phase, which also I call mindset, because basically date and phase, as it pertains to us as deer hunters, what we're really looking at is getting inside the mindset of a deer and what he should be doing. And my idea of hunting, I'm always trying to be ahead of the deer, not like chasing what he did 2 weeks ago. So date, phase, or mindset is kind of one thing, and it's constant. In my opinion, that mindset is the same to the day, every day throughout the year. Um, and then, you have the moon phase, the moon, which is, it's not constant, but it's predictable. And then basically the last factor would be environmental conditions, which are, the weather. And that's the wild card. That's the one that, we can't predict. So, and then all the other things, like people say, well, what about food? And what about, the looking for a girlfriend? Well, yeah, all that stuff happens, but we're talking about like what triggers them to move in daylight. So, um, so it's always kind of those three things. Um, and like you said, the weather front that's coming up, we can dive into that.
Yeah. So I pulled up, I'm going to share my screen here. So anyone listening can go to our YouTube channel and also watch this.
Yep.
But this is something that everyone can look up online for free. They can just look at Weather Underground. That's where you like to look the most for this type of information.
Yeah. So what I do on my phone is I go to Safari on an Apple, and I got a video on it, about how to set up. It's called the Magic X Day or something like that. If you go on our channel, but yeah, once you go to it on Safari and you get your area, put in the zip code, and you hit 10-day, this is what shows up. It doesn't show up in the actual app. It's only if you go on Safari. And then once I get it up there, I'll hit pin to home screen, and then it kind of acts as an app because it'll just open it straight up. And the reason that I've kind of settled on this, and I like this, is because, you know, as opposed to some of the other apps and stuff out there, it's just the visual is just the ebbs and flows are so much more pronounced. The graph is really good. That those lines are really pronounced. They're a little taller. So
hmm So with what we have going on right here, it's Friday. It's about, I don't know, 11 o'clock or so. Break this down like I'm in first grade and
yeah.
I've never done this before.
So this is I'm happy because this is a really perfect example, and I just call them a Magic X because for it's a very easy way to just pick the best days to hunt, and you can see it there. Basically, you have that black line is your barometric pressure, and it's on the rise, and then you have your temperature line, which is that graph above it, and it's on the decline. And then you have that blue is rain or moisture or whatever, and that's on the decline. And then, generally, you'll have the cloud cover will also be on the decline. So as the front comes in, the pressure rises, that cold, dense air comes in, and the pressure rises. And generally the cloud cover and the moisture and the humidity and everything and the temperature all go down. So it literally, like I could draw it on there, it makes an X that you can see, and it's just an easy way to help people really spot those really good days. So in the and every front is different, so it's interesting. This last front we had, um, it was kind of unique because it was like a very long, drawn out. It was actually like two fronts. It was kind of weird, and they were back to back on 24-hour, like 24 hours apart. But that second one, when it hit, that pressure, it wasn't as drastic as this, where it basically rises and peaks over the course of 24 hours. It was like a 48-hour deal. So every front is a little different, and you start watching them, and it's kind of interesting to see what you think is the most powerful front. But the way that the perfect Magic X Day, in my opinion, looks, or the perfect deer hunting day looks and feels in October, is you wake up in the morning, and every front hits at a different time. So the perfect one, you wake up in the morning, it's kind of like dreary, stagnant, the air is humid, it's warm, and then boom, that wind comes in at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, everything starts breaking up, and by 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon, the temperature is way less, the air is way drier, it's bluebird, the temperatures drop 15 degrees, and the pressure is peaking or really high. Those days are magical. I mean, if I got a big deer that I basically know what he's doing, and we get that day in October, and it doesn't really matter what day of the month, beginning or end. I mean, I literally go to the stand like shaking because I'm so pumped. And those days are so good. I mean, you know, it's not hard for me to go anymore, but my hopes are not nearly as high as in October chasing a big mature deer when I don't have, either that day, and that, it's that evening of, which would be on this front, it would be like that Saturday evening. So that and then the next morning are the two that I get most excited about. And then this is like a long drawn out high pressure front. So in general, it'll be good, but it just that change is really shocking to him, I think.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I generally like the beginning of it better.
So looking at this, you said Saturday evening is what excites you, and Sunday morning, and
Yeah.
then let's say you are after a specific mature buck, seeing this pressure is really high for a long time, and there's still, I mean, the weather becomes a little bit more stagnant, going into Monday and Tuesday.
Yep.
Like if Saturday and Sunday morning are a 10 out of 10, what would you rank the rest of the week?
Yep. And so as far as fronts go, I'd call it, I think there's something early season about like 30.2, when it breaks that just being magical. Um, but and eh, the other two things we talked about were date, phase, mindset, and moon. So like we're in the beginning of November, October. And the other thing I wanted to kind of like make sure people understand is when we talk about mindset of a deer in October, and this goes for all deer hunting. I think one of the things that sets people apart that are really successful all the time is they're always thinking like a deer. You know what I mean? Like they're in their head, and they're kind of predicting what they're going to do. So in the month of October, like a big deer's mindset is territory marking. I mean, they're rambunctious, and they're grumpy, and they're trying to mark their territory. And I think people will see them like come out in a plot and push some does around, and they'll think they're like the rut starting early or this or that, but really they're just showing dominance. So, and that escalates through the month of October. So, um, when this front hits in the end of October, it's even more powerful. Um, and then the third thing with the moon, in my opinion, I know there's a lot of people that are not, they say the science doesn't, say that the moon affects them, but I can tell you right now, a big mature deer, absolutely around the full moon, the what I like is the week leading up to the full moon, in the evenings, because what happens is the sun rises and sets in the same time on the day of the full moon, and the day before it's 45 minutes early. I don't know what it is, um, but I'm sure it has to do with the position of that moon in the sky. But I almost always see in that 5, 6 days leading up to the full moon, a big mature deer will walk in daylight on one of those days, even with marginal conditions. And we saw in end of September, with the last full moon. I had 3 or 4 buddies, everybody hunting big deer, and we didn't have great conditions, but almost every single one of them's buck walked in daylight, at least one of those days with marginal conditions. So October in general, we're looking for those where evening hunting is more conducive, because they're on food, and then they're scraping on and around the edges of that food because there's lots of scent there, and they're feeling rambunctious, and they're trying to mark their territory. So in October, because it's conducive to evening hunting, in a perfect world, we're at the end of October because that testosterone and everything is ramped up the most. We have a full moon in the end of the month, right at the end of the month. And this year we kind of have that. And then boom, we get like a Magic X front like we've got coming, and all that stuff collides together. If you've done your homework, you should get your opportunity because
Mm.
it's just that powerful. Now in the real world, everything comes together probably, maybe a couple times a season. Um, that's kind of, that's kind of my approach to it. So, but I will say, that moon, it's kind of a nudge, it makes things better, but there's nothing like a front. And we've seen that this year, the first front of the year, Ben Rising shot a big one. I shot a big one. One of my buddies missed a big one the second time. We won't mention names. But they just, got waylaid, and a lot, unfortunately, a lot of people don't hunt in October. They think that they're going to put pressure on their farm. They don't need to, or
How,
whatever. And man, you got a month to get out there and get him, and while he's doing what he's been doing, and it's the best hunting of the year.